All right. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Conversations with Chef Octavia. Conversations with Chef Octavia is a conversation evolved around God, food, and health. Every Monday, I am live at 6:30 a.m. So today, I am super excited. We are on the topic of PTSD, and as you can see, I have a special guest who is also my friend. I am super excited. I'm going to have her introduce herself. So we ain't gonna waste no time. We're gonna go ahead and get right into it. So yeah. And like I said, we're on the topic of PTSD. We're gonna be, diving in deeper how it correlates to my friend, how it correlates to myself, and of course how it correlates to the word of God. So we're gonna get right into it. Good morning, friend.
Good morning. It's early.
It is early. Yes, yes.
So I suppose this is where I introduce myself. Is that what we're doing?
Yes, just who are you? And then we'll get right into the topic. I'll go into a little bit of the topic, how it stemmed. Yeah. And we just gonna have a conversation. That's it.
All right. So I I didn't actually think about how I was going to introduce myself. I thought you were going to do it. So
It's okay. I said I was gonna have you do it. Okay. It's cool.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
You want me to
My name
introduce
is
you?
Raneca.
Okay. I
No,
say I
I can
can.
introduce myself.
All right.
It's me saying my name. To be sure. As the saints say, or the pastor say, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to go. But so my name is Raneca Crawford. And I'll be 50 soon, which is awesome because you see it. Let's see, I'm a mother of two children, Precious and Zion. I reside in Springfield, Ohio, which people always try to associate with the Simpsons for some reason because, they live in Springfield, but it's not. I don't know if it was ever made known which Springfield they were in, but I live in Springfield, Ohio. I love the Lord, and I'm super excited that you invited me to come on and talk about this very, very timely subject. And let's go. Let's see where God is going to take us.
Absolutely. So I'm so excited and welcome to the platform. This is the first of many for sure. Um I'm super excited about this conversation because it's so different. Because oftentimes we correlate PTSD to, of course, PTSD is post traumatic stress syndrome, right? Or disorder, I'm sorry. And it's like a lot of times you hear about it from the military standpoint, right? And it's like you really don't hear it from civilian life or just the everyday person, right? Oftentimes it's like, oh, you went to war, this happened, so now you're faced with this, or you've seen this event, you know, and oftentimes you do not hear conversations around just everyday people or just general people outside of the military around PTSD. And I'm not minimizing, PTSD. I know is heavy within the military community. My background is military, so I know firsthand. So I'm not negating it, but after our conversations and how our conversations, I always say our conversations don't go left, they go right, because it's like we could call and be like, "Hey, friend, how you doing?" And with updates, and it goes, in the direction that God desires for it to go, and it always blesses both of us. So I wanted to share and open up and make it public this conversation that we were having. And of course, I've been on the topic of PTSD. I'm not going to get into where I've been. I may get into it at the end. I know it's been, a few Mondays and I have not been live, but I had some technical difficulties, kinda, and I ain't want y'all to come for me. So I had to get those in order first. So, but I'm back on schedule. You'll see me back here every Monday morning. So, but yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and get right into it. So I wanted to ask the question like PTSD, because I know on the phone you broke it down, and I was like, what? Oh, I did not look at it in that way. So when you hear PTSD, what does that do for you? Like where does that correlate like with you, with Raneca?
So I'm trying to decide what vantage point, to offer on this subject. So I will say this. I guess I'll start here. I appreciate that you framed it within the military community. PTSD is often associated, or probably more readily associated, with veteran community or persons who have served in the military. And I believe that I actually didn't do the research, so I'm going to make this up, which is what I do a lot. But I believe
disclaimer.
A lot of the things that we do in this country, in our communities or whatever, is more so reactionary versus response. So I think it was the reaction from a science standpoint or a mental health standpoint. It was looked at after the effect. They were like, well, these persons who have served have been maybe altered somehow. And I think it was as a result of looking at them after they had spent time in wartime or spent time, in the boot camps and transitioning into, different things. And then once they came home from their posts,
community got involved. And I only preface that, and again, I made all of that up. I only preface it that way because of what is associated with service and the after effects potentially of war, but not necessarily exclusively. So even though I am not military personnel, I do believe that it's like a universal thing in that it is wartime. And I'm just go ahead and tell everybody now, I'm super churchy. So we are always
Yes.
we are always at war.
I
We
love
are
it.
in war. So since the fall, we've been in war. So there's not too many. And I'll also say when it comes to post-traumatic stress disorder, it has broadened, since it started in the context of the military, as more so of a focus on trauma than versus trauma related to service connection. So the PTSD is now being recognized generationally in terms of persons who are descendants of slaves, or enslaved people. There's PTSD that is associated with just general trauma, whatever that trauma is. So I think it's widened in terms of research and understanding that it can cross anything. So I believe what we'll end up talking, I think it could be applied to relational things. So like if someone was in a relationship and there was a domestic violence situation, there could be PTSD associated with that. There could be PTSD associated with what people have called church hurt now. And I'm saying that in air quotes, not to diminish it, but I think, that term has been used super loose. So PTSD can pretty much be applied to any space where someone has experienced some kind of trauma, however that trauma came, or however they experienced that trauma in their body in real time, the after effect of it.
So how do you feel that PTSD has affected you? I know that's a broad question. Um, so let's take it. Hmm, let's take it to food, right? We could take it
Okay.
to food. Yeah, let's take it to food. We'll start there because I know that's a Yeah, it's a broad question if I just leave it, open like that, because it could be, in any area. Let's take it to food. We could start off with childhood or wherever you feel comfortable starting.
So if we're going to frame it in the context of food, first of all, thank you for, because I'm broad, honey, and I would have went all over
Yeah, I
with
got
that.
you. I got you.
So, so I and this might be perceived as self-deprecation, but I call myself a lot of things. One of which I think I got from Kev on stage, he calls Black people just generally broadly the blacks, right? So I consider myself one of the blacks, but I also consider myself one of the fats. You know, I weigh almost 300 pounds.
You that's
I'm, I'm only
okay.
5'3" and I weigh almost, I'm knocking the snot out of 300, honey. And so I consider myself one of the fats. And so my 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 trauma, in order to unpack my trauma as it relates to food, I think it might be helpful to just talk about my food story.
Okay.
Food is an
You can go
interesting
there.
topic for me. So I think my introduction to food, because as it was told to me of my mother, I'm the eldest of 7 children, 5 biological, 2 were adopted. And of the 5 biological children, I was the only child, I believe, that wasn't breastfed. I think I was the only bottle fed of my, and I'm not casting shade on my mom, but
Nah,
and,
I
and
love
I'm
your
not
mom.
even I'm not even sure why that happened. Um, but if I was to frame, because I have 2 children, like I said in the beginning, and I breastfed both of my children. But let's just say, because I'm deep for no reason, that my food story started with being bottle fed formula,
Hmm.
which, for, and there are parents or mothers that are unable to breastfeed and what have you, but maybe because my mom was a new mom, I don't know. It's a conversation I'll have to have with her. But let's just say that my introduction to food or sustenance started with a bottle, and potentially with something that wasn't natural, we'll say.
Right.
And then it kind of went from there. So just from that standpoint, I think I could say there's probably trauma associated with that. It's just how I was introduced to food with sustenance that might not have been the best, but maybe this is in the 70s, they had started, saying, hey, we need to feed these babies something for these women that can't nurse. So it starts there, and then from there, I had a parents, mother and father. Now my dad is from Ohio, but my mother is from Las Vegas, Nevada. So I want to frame my food story with these 2 people, because I had the way that my parents met. My dad is service connected in that he served in the military and he was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, Nevada. And that's how he met my mom. So you have my dad who had his food story. And if I'm a guess what my dad's food story was, it was probably based and steeped in food scarcity and poverty, because that's how he grew up. You also have my mother who was in Las Vegas, Nevada. But my mom's story in Nevada, Las Vegas, is very unique, because even though people associate Las Vegas, Nevada with the glitz and the glamour and the hotels, my mother was born to um, parents, but my grandfather was really unique individual in that he had his family like deep in the desert in this place called 4 Mile, and 4 Mile was away from the city. So my
Wow.
mother actually lived in an actual shack, and I mean what I say,
Wow.
an actual shack in the desert in Las Vegas. She didn't have running
Wow.
water until she was 10. So they had the shack, and then they had a trailer on the property that they lived on. So
Wow.
food scarcity is also a part of her story. So if you take that, this food story of my dad, who lived here in Ohio and had a rough upbringing in terms of what his parents made and the way that they approach food, and then you marry that literally with an individual who also had issues with food scarcity and also food trauma. You take these two people together, and then they
Wow.
together conceive me. That food story actually started even before the bottle. So I was probably conceived, if I would really sit with
Out of
it and think
trauma.
about it, interrogate it. I was conceived in food trauma, food trauma,
Right.
because it was the experience of my parents. And if you
Wow.
want to talk about that, I'm sorry.
Not. I wanted to like stop there, like not stop, but just pause there for a second because when it relates to trauma, and a lot of times like between they say studies show that between the ages of 0 to 6 is when you're most affected by trauma. Really, it shapes you, right? So from the time you're in the womb, so for you to say, "Hey, this was my mom's story and my dad's story, and then here I come." So really, and then when you said from the bottle, right? So you were birthed or conceived out of this trauma that two individuals were experiencing, and then you're birthed into that, and now you're introduced to trauma straight from the bottle, right? So that's in itself, I think a lot of times we don't look at things like that because it's like I always say you have to get to the root. Like there's always a root to something, right? And then now you're, this full blown adult, and now it's just like, but this is what I was birthed out of. And so yeah, I just wanted to say that. So you could go ahead and get back into
Yeah.
it.
So one of the things that because I'm not one of those people who have been one of the fats my entire life. I was tiny until, I mean, like I weighed under 100. I was considered petite, like a petite model for a while when I was pursuing modeling. And I didn't gain weight until, I want to say I was 17. So I think I was a senior in high school, which is when I got pregnant with my daughter. So I had never ever been overweight. So, but but I gained 100 pounds with her during that pregnancy. So, and I've never lost it. So they said this is baby weight. That's insane, but it's not. But
So do you feel that that was trauma in itself? Like, was
yeah. So
that during
when I
that time?
first
So,
when I first started trying to unpack how I arrived at 280, do you know what I'm saying? And I have been over 300 before, but I'm like you. I'm well, I shouldn't say that, like, take glory for that. I believe the Lord started dealing with me on how to unpack, how to interrogate, how to, deal with root things. So I've been sitting with it for years and years and years because my daughter is 31. So I've been sitting with this for 31 years, almost 32 years. And so I've had literally that much time to sit with it and unpack it. And I thought initially it had something to do with food, but the more I sat with it, the more the Lord had to reveal to me, because I dealt with the shame of it. We can get into and unpack a little bit more in terms of the trauma aspect of it. But the Lord wanted to help me walk through and detach shame and guilt from the story. And a part of the way that he did that was letting me know, and this was not accusation, this was not shifting, blame or shame or guilt. It was like, as he said, with most of the things as it pertains to my story, is a lot of this happened before you. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and even though I started this story with my parents, it happened before them.
Right.
So, because then if he hadn't have corrected that, like, oh well, then my parents are the problem, and I would have blamed them. But he
Right.
was like,
Right.
no. So and I would have been back to great greats trying to blame or whatever, with them trying to reconcile how this happened. So and let me also say, I am not deflecting and saying, well, none of this or the way that I present and the way that my weight had nothing to do with choice, but we're not quite there yet. But I do appreciate that
We're gonna
in
get
the
there
con.
though. Yeah. It was,
Yeah. So, but just the root, getting to the root of it
Mhm.
is where I I believe he had to get me to, and it took years to do that. So now I heard this yesterday actually, so I thank God for this. And I'll give credit to where credit is due. I heard Dr. Anita Phillips say this. She said, rather than looking for answers, we need to look for healing. And so she
Yeah.
said, she said that the answers didn't heal her, God did. Right. So when I first started on
Yeah.
the journey of getting to the root of the thing, I wanted the answer to why this happened.
Mm.
But the Lord was like, no,
Wow.
I want to heal you and then I'll give you the answer. So,
Yep.
and so I don't want to pretend like I got that, I'm delivered and all the good and all that good stuff.
Right.
I
Like,
This is
yeah.
my act of this is me in real time. So this is the
And,
revelation that I'm being given in real time and
and this
applying
is,
in real time.
I'm gonna pause you one more time. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
But it's just like this is really what this is about, because oftentimes, and I always say this, you see the before and then you see the after, right? And a lot of times you don't see the in between or in real time when something is happening or when that deliverance and breakthrough is really happening, right? And oftentimes it's like when people see the beginning and then the end, it's no in between. They don't see process, right? And it's just like, wow, like I relate to that story, but I know God did it for her, but I don't think he'll do it for me, right? And I think that level of transparency shows the full picture. It's like watching a movie. You're not going to watch the trailer and then watch the ending of the movie. That don't make sense, right? You want to see the
Come
whole
on,
thing.
friend.
Okay, how
Come
did
on.
this thing play out? And so this is, me using my platform. This is what Conversations with Chef Octavia is all about, because it's God, food, and health. But at the same time, we're going to get breakthrough and we're going to see, okay, this is kind of how it started. This is the root. And then, okay, this is their process, right? This is how God is doing this. And that's how breakthrough happens for you, the person that's sharing their story, because as you share it, it's like, boom, like God is getting the glory and he's doing something in that. And it's just like, I know when I share my testimony, and I remember, and this was actually a camera guy that told me, he was like, hey, the more you share your story, the more God's going to free some things off of you. And I'm like, okay, it sounded good at the moment, but then now, like, fast forward to 10 plus years later, it's like, oh, okay, I see what he was saying. Because when we share, it's, you know what I'm saying? It's the word of our testimony, right? Like that's, so the more we share. So that's why I wanted to pause you there, and then we'll get into it. So this is where you are now, and this is
Mhm.
what you were birthed out of. So we're walking in this real time, and yes, it will be a part two. So I know we're not going to unpack all of this within our 45 minutes that we got on this live. So All right, go ahead. I'm sorry, Ray. Well, I'm not
Yes,
sorry, but I know how
yes,
our conversations go. So
yes. So
we,
because I wanted answers, I believed what I was supposed to do is start where I was and be like, okay, this is where I am. How did I get here? And so I
right.
started unpacking things. And interestingly, and maybe I'll get into this, maybe I won't. Well, no, I'll just say this because it's not technically a plug at this point, but I am actively writing a book about my journey. And just yesterday, I was trying to think about what the cover of this book would look like. And I've been wrestling with this for a while, but there's a picture that my mom has of me, and I'm sitting in a high chair, and my face is a little bit messy. The high chair table is messy, and I have this bowl in front of me, and in this bowl, I want to say it was like beans and franks, like hot dogs and pork and beans or something like that. And and I it resonated with me that that should be, because that's probably one of the first pictures that has ever been taken of me eating.
Wow.
And even though I'm
Hmm.
not fat in the picture, I'm a regular sized girl, um, for my age and, you know, height and all that stuff. But that, for whatever reason, it just resonated in my heart that that needs to be the cover of my book.
Beautiful.
Because, so the title of my book is I've Been Fat for a While Now. And then the subtitle is Me is in the Way, and way is spelled Weigh. So,
I love that title, by the way. I mean, I know, like, uh, people may not, because I pray that no one gets offended by it, you know, because it's like I know how we talk, and that word "fat" in general could be offensive, right? And but even though you're talking to yourself, but I think that's so dope. I think it's so dope, and yeah, whimsical at the same
yes.
time. Yeah, so
So, in the context of PTSD, so let me go back a little bit. So, the way that I've always approached food, even though I didn't have language for it, this is a part of me sitting in the, getting to the root of it. I've always eaten in a way that was unhealthy. So, and again, this is not shifting blame, but I did this as a mother. I'm pretty sure my mother did this to her as a mother. My mother did this to me as a mother, where we will feed our babies until they just rocking and smiling and their little bellies is tight. You know what I mean? So
right,
our
absolutely,
introduction to food, from bottle and or nursing to when we, go to get to baby food, to when we start eating actual solid food, you know, our food story starts in the womb with what our mother, well, before our parents get together. My dad had a story, my mom had a story, then they came together, they conceived me, and then once I was conceived, my sustenance came from her, and then, so I was actually shaping in it in her womb. And so the so being shapen in it in her womb, her story that came from, egg, his story that came from seed, and those two things coming together and making me. So
hmm
she's eating what she's eating while she's pregnant with me, and then the bottle, and then I learned to eat. But a lot of my eating was associated or in the context of trauma, because food scarcity was in both my parents' stories, and now my parents are trying to not recreate their food stories in me. They had lack. They had times where things were not, the cupboards weren't full. You know what I mean? So they want to
hmm
make sure in their mind, and my parents weren't saved at the time when they conceived and had me, but now they're trying to undo generational curses. And again, they didn't have the language for this, but this is what they're doing. They want to make sure that their first child is not going to see any hungry days,
Right.
or have missed meals, or so now they are trying to undo a thing and with me by making sure that I'm full, making sure that, you know what I mean? But I don't know if they understood that their desire to undo or not repeat with their first child actually inadvertently caused some damage, caused damage.
Right.
So the way that I eat has always been in the context of overeating, even though it didn't show up in my body until I had had a baby or got pregnant. I have always overeaten, like always. So like my when I was a little girl, and I graduated to having Big Macs, which, let's say, a Big Mac meal versus a Happy Meal, which happened maybe around 8 or 9 when my parents divorced. I liked the Big Mac meal, and it had to be large, and we're talking about an 8, 9 year old child. And then they had started. They used to have these things called Mac Pizza, which was like a little pizza pocket. So I wanted the meal.
Really?
Yes, honey, they were amazing. part of a part of being a mother and a single mother, sometimes you overcompensate. You know what I mean? So my parents tried to overcompensate, trying to undo the things that were done in them. And then when my mom was a single mother after my parents' divorce, she was going to make sure that her kids didn't suffer. So those times when she had extra money, we would go out and eat. And she was like, get whatever you want. Because in her heart, this was her giving us a treat. And she didn't want
Loving
us
on
to
her kids.
feel the pain. Right. She didn't want us to feel the pain of it. She said, get whatever you want. So I would get a Big Mac meal and a Mac pizza, a large Big Mac meal and a Mac pizza. Nobody needs
Wow.
that much food at
Right.
that young. But that's how I always ate. And so anytime I ate out, I would never just eat the meal. I would eat the meal and, do you know what I mean?
Wow.
Extra this, extra that.
So
And that has been my whole life. And even at the dinner table, when you have, well, initially it was 5 siblings, and we cooked big meals. Do you know what I mean? So I'm like,
right.
I'm piling on my plate because I guess subconsciously I'm eating from that scarcity mindset. And that's something else that God had to show me. He was like, my overeating or me being fat or presenting as fat wasn't necessarily the from the result of overeating. It is because of my lack. Lack is
Mm-hmm.
why I'm fat.
And
Do you know what I mean?
fool.
So, and I
Fool.
was like,
Okay.
how is that?
Wait,
Because
wait,
because because I
wait.
created famine
Oh,
in my own
wait.
body.
You gotta
Okay, I'm
pause there,
sorry.
Free. Wait. We can't go past that. Wait. Wait. No, you good. Like, cause wow. Like putting black with overweight, right? We'll say overweight because I don't want nobody to come for me and say, "Oh, you calling people fat?" No, but it's like to link the two and to go back to how you said your mom compensated. So, and I need to plug my thing up. Okay, but I did not plug my computer up. I hope it does not die. But um how you said your mom will overcompensate, right? And the picture that you talked about of you at a high chair with food, right? And how she would feed you, right? In that, and I know your mom had good intentions, right? Because
Absolutely.
she was number one feeding you, right? Nourishment, whether or not the food had nourishment or not, but that was her way of, okay, I'm supplying for my child the best way that I can. And it's like that habit of overeating was instilled at that moment, right? And then to get into the age of 8, and now it just, you graduated to another level or elevated to another level of overeating. It's just, and then, we're not even going to get into what you're eating, right? But the overeating part in general is where that habit was instilled. And so then more trauma comes or more things happen. And now it's like the weight. And then for you to say the lack is why I was fat, I'm fat, right? Um, yeah. So I just wanted to, like, hold up, wait, you just said something. I mean, you've been saying something the whole time, but it's just like, hold up, like, okay. Because I think a lot of people don't, and that's the importance of getting to the root. A lot of people, or they don't even allow God to expose the thing to say, okay, this is what it is before. And like you said, you look for the answer. It's like, okay, how can I, what's the medicine for this? What's the,
Right.
and we know that God has everything, and it does not matter how you got there. If it was you, if it was your mama, whoever, it don't even matter. It's like, do you want to be healed? Do you want to be free? Point blank. Either you want to or you're not. You know what I'm saying? So either you going, God is like, hey, either you going to let me handle this problem, or you going to keep it and you still going to be in the same state that you are. So I'm grateful that you're on the path of freedom, healing, deliverance, all the things. So yeah, okay. Okay.
So the Lord had to walk me through the idea that I created famine in my own body.
Mm.
So you understand that food is energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was taking in these crazy amounts of food or sustenance or energy, but energy will either be used. That's what it's, the design of the body is for energy to be used or food to be used. And whatever's not used is eliminated, right? But the way that I was eating, I had signaled in my body that it was a famine, because my body's like, hold on, why is she eating this much? So lean times must be coming. So the way that I ate in overeating signaled my body like, well, we need to store this then, because lean times are coming. So my body would take it in and it would just store it. But to have developed an eating life, a diet life, in where I just took in energy, but I never expended it. Do you know what I mean? So, and I was taking in amounts of food that were way more than my body needed. Then my body shifted and was like, well, let's just start storing this. And that's how I started collecting the weight or adding on weight. But it was because I created the famine. I created this scarcity model in my own body. I was experiencing it in real time because of the way that I chose to eat. So, obesity is not necessary. It is and it's not. It's like two things can be true. It can be the result of overeating, but what that overeating produced was lack. It produced famine. And I know that sounds, it's really hard to hold those two in the same space, but this is how God told me. So, and let me go ahead and qualify it. I might as well qualify it now. Because I have this relationship with God, in that when it comes to root things, we have this Genesis relationship. I've been in Genesis for decades now, studying the book of Genesis. And if we were to get real deep, food trauma started in the garden. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I
Yeah,
need to be
we
clear.
talked about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So food trauma, not
Woo!
technically, food trauma started in the garden because they lived in a food forest. There was no lack. Do you
None.
know what I mean? There was no
None.
lack, but what the serpent appealed to, or what he tried to okey doke and did, as they would say, the
Right.
woman was hey, even though you have all this stuff, there's something that you don't have, because
Right.
if you had this, then you could be more. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He, as she would say in the King James version, the serpent beguiled me and I did eat. Food trauma. Because he
Oh, I'm
approached
sorry.
her.
Wait. Because the way you put that, it's like, the way you said it, it was almost like, oh, I'm the victim here. No, ma'am. It's
Exactly. So, and
ma'am.
that was the result of the fall, because when before the fall there was no sin, right?
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
no sin. So there's not, so the context of the serpent, or the serpent even approaching the woman by saying, God didn't give you everything that he could have.
The lie, right?
The lie.
Mm.
But the
Mm-hmm.
lie was framed in lack. You
Mm.
if you eat this, you will have more. You'll become more. And he is trying to keep that from you. Do you know what I'm saying?
And
And then
even in that though, right? Because it's like even in that, right? If we, put that in real time now, right? And how we view food, how we eat food, consume food, right? It's like the more, like you said, to the Big Mac meal, or and the pizza, or what, the I forgot what you call it, but the pizza that McDonald's used to sell, or whatever. But it's like, and the more, oh, you want to supersize it, oh, you want to, yeah, let me get more, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, because I know with me, if I do, like, I no, I normally get a kids meal, right? And people normally laugh at me, right? Because it's like, no, I get not even full off a kids meal. I'm satisfied, and that's where we should be eating at, right? And it's just like, but what you were saying was, this started in the garden, right? How it's like our lack of satisfaction, right? It's like, we want the more. I'm not satisfied, and then we eat, and God is giving us the signal, like, hey, in the garden, it's like, no, you got everything. You know what I'm
everything.
saying? You got
Right.
all the fruits, all the animals, everything, right? And it's just like, man, and in abundance, like all, like literally all you can eat, and we're still not satisfied. And then it's just like, we miss that signal, or we ignored the signal. We don't miss it, but we try to say, oh, I didn't realize I was done. No. This is where this is where you are, and this is how you got here. And God is like, okay, listen, I'm gonna help you, but it's still like, that flesh part is what craves, and it's never, our flesh is never satisfied. Never. Never. You know what I'm saying? That satisfaction only comes from God. And it's like, if we never experience that, it's like you'll never know what it's like. You'll always be searching. You'll always be getting the Big Mac, or the larger meal. Oh, I gotta make more, or I gotta store this up to save this, and you still won't be satisfied. Oh my God. But okay, I'm sorry. I just went but it's like, if we look at where we are now, and it's like, number one, you have to ask, what is that satisfying feeling? What does that look like? What is that? And that, from a spiritual standpoint, is found in God. And then when you're full, you, like, from an eating standpoint, you have to go to, like, okay, even, and not even to get into what you're eating, right? Of course, what you're eating matters more, right? Because a lot of times if you eat a salad, yeah, you could probably eat a nice hearty salad and be satisfied, right? But if you're always looking for that full feeling, you're always searching for that, you're still going to overeat in some capacity, and that's still not healthy. But it's like when we okay, when we take that to God, right, and we sit in that with God, what you're allowing him to do in this moment, like in real time, as you're unpacking, like, okay, the root has been exposed through your parents, right? And now it's like, okay, when this happened, boom, this was more trauma. Boom, now I'm here. Now 100 pounds. Now, and more and more. And now God is like, okay, this is where you are, but I got you. It don't even matter. Don't even unpack. I'm not gonna give you the answer, but here's your healing. Whew. Okay. All right. Go ahead. I think. Oh, we're at 7:15. Well, we're at 7:20. So, and I know, yeah, we gonna have to go. But okay, we're gonna pause it here. So I guess we'll leave with, because you shaped it to the garden and how trauma started in the garden, right? And how it correlates to your story, your food story, and how God has revealing, or is still revealing himself within this and helping you unpack. So let me ask you this, because I always gotta leave people with something that they could grab onto, and to what at what moment did you allow God, and what did that look like? Like, allow God to, at what moment did you say, okay, God, I'm going to receive my healing. I'm going to receive what you want to do, like as far as your deliverance process, journey, we'll say that way. At what moment, what was the turning point? Because I always say, like, it starts with your mind first, right? Before you could move forward or even begin to unpack, you have to want to, because it's work. You know what I'm saying? It's work on your part, emotionally, mentally, and sometimes with that trauma, you have to go back to, and you may have to, really expose the wound, right? And that ain't comfortable, So at what moment did you say, okay, yes, God, I'm up for it? And what did that look like? Was it his voice? Was it, yeah. I'll leave it there.
So
I know
if
that
I'm
was a
if I'm being transparent in how this is going to come off, well, I think I'm actively making the choice. I don't want to come off like I made the choice, because I don't think I have yet. If I'm to be real, I haven't.
Mm-hmm.
It
Okay.
is one of my favorite, I always say, I say in real time a lot. So in real time is where I am with that. So it's like I have this information, the healing has started, but did I make a conscious decision and start, and like I'm on this journey? Not necessarily, because I may, like, right now, even today, I'm like, man, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do
Wow.
this because of all, like you said, all of the things that it touches. Because it started with me taking the blame and like, oh, it's me, shame, guilt, me. And then I was like, hold on, it's my mom and them. And then I shifted the blame to them. And then it took me all the way back to the garden. I was like, well, then Adam and Eve, then it was their fault.
Right.
But here's something that I want to say. You mentioned this. They had everything. They were satisfied. Like, that is where they started. So how does the serpent try to appeal to what has already been satisfied? How do you
Yeah.
even, if we're talking about, they had no sin. And I need to make that point. They had no sin. So how do you even introduce the idea of lack when you are satisfied? The way that God had designed the body, the way that God had made the landscape of the garden was with everything. There was no lack. And so, like, the Lord had to tell me, he said, whatever I give capacity for, I make provision for. There was no lack. They were already satisfied, right? So in me, it's that the healing of it, as I'm learning to choose it, learning to pursue it, learning to receive it, is that I'm not starting at a deficit. I'm starting at satisfied. I'm starting at the capacity that he already gave me. The process that I am actively learning to receive and walk out is the agreement of that. Do you know what I'm saying? Because it's easier for me to be like, oh, well, this is a mess. I'm starting at a mess. You know what I mean? And the Lord's like, no,
Right.
you're starting at satisfied. And so that's something else he had to tell me. He said, stop letting your reference point be the fall. Let your reference point be what I said the first time. So this is unpacking that and getting to the root of that is how the healing is coming. And it is an act of worship, really, through my choice, is to be like, okay, God, I agree with that. And then some days I don't agree. It's like, I'm gonna eat this Big Mac and die. And you know what I mean? Like Elijah was like, I'm just gonna eat this and die. Or the woman in the that said she's gonna eat this cake and die. That was me. I'm like, I'm gonna eat this Big Mac and die.
So he was just choosing. Wow,
so
hilarious.
It's a constant. It's right. So it's in real time. So I don't want to pretend like I don't have to make this decision today.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's ongoing. So I'm sorry if that was a weird answer, but it is.
But the thing is, because at the same time, it's a daily choice. It's a daily decision. You know, we have choices to make daily, you know, and especially when it comes to food. And, you know, the enemy is going to present a thing, right? And, you know, and of course, the thing he presents, it be looking good. It's like, ooh, you know, oh, this is my favorite, you know what I'm saying? And I've talked about it on here. You know, I used to like, what's that, Swiss rolls, you know, and Twinkies, you know, and I sit there and eat the whole pot. You know what I'm saying? Especially if it's that time of the month. I'm going in, you know, with no question. I'm not even asking no questions. But when God revealed, it's like, hey, this thing right here is trying to take you out. You know what I'm saying? If you don't stop, you're going to, you know. So I had to make a decision. So in each time I see a Twinkie, that wasn't the first time I had to make the decision. I had to be like, okay. Or I see, you know what I'm saying? Or I'm feeling like, oh, I need something sweet. Oh, I want this, you know. But even in that, it's a process because God will begin to change your mindset first, right? The way you view it. And it's just like, because we're viewing it from a point of, oh, I gotta have it, you know, and I want it, you know what I'm saying? And that's it, you know, versus, okay, I want it, but God, I know it's not good for me. I know this could kill me, you know what I'm saying? Eventually, maybe not, you know, instantly, right? Maybe not like they was, you know, was happening in biblical days, but it like over time, it will potentially, right? And that's the that's his plan, right? To kill, steal, destroy. He trying to take us out, right? That's his whole motive, right? So it's just like, if we fall into his devices and what, you know, and how he paints a picture, oh, this is good, you're gonna feel good, you know, you eat this, and you're really not, because you're gonna want more, right? But God is like, no, allow me to satisfy you. And that comes with those daily decisions. It's not over the years, it comes with that one choice and then another choice and then another, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes it's like, okay, I made the wrong choice, but he's like, okay, my grace is sufficient. Here it is. Like, I got you, daughter. We're still on this journey. So let's go. So I don't, so I love how you answered that question, because that's real. That's what we face daily. You know what I'm saying? When, when you get off of here, the enemy gonna be like, oh yeah, you want that, or, but it's a choice. And I love this because, like I said in the beginning, this is exposing him, right? Because now it's like, now you're on here and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm not quite there yet, or it's in real time. So it's those daily choices. But even in that, God is still going to get the glory out of that, whether you make the right decision or not. Because it's like you're on this journey, and it's just like, it's those daily decisions. And I know me within, my deliverance journey, I didn't always get it right. And it's like, shoot, you know what I'm saying? 30 days after I said yes, I was back in it to what I was doing. And so, and it's okay, because God meets us right where we are. And we don't have to say, yeah, I'm perfect, or I'm delivered, and yes, you are free at the moment you say yes, but it's still those daily decisions. So, yeah, so I love how you answered that, friend. And so I want to say, like, if you're watching this, even if it's the replay, and you're like, well, I'm here, or I haven't even made the decision, right? But the fact that you're thinking about it,
thank you,
that's
Lord.
God petitioning himself. It's like, okay, daughter, okay, son, this is what I have for you, right? And I could only relate it to my story, right? I remember, and I shared it on this platform. I was living a homosexual lifestyle for 12 years, but I remember when God was beginning to open up my eyes to say that, daughter, this is not the life I have for you, right? And this happened before the moment. I was already watching videos of other people's testimony of them getting free, but by me being exposed to that, I didn't even know it was possible. You know what I'm saying? Before that, before me seeing somebody walk it out in real time, like, the people that I was following, they were very transparent within their journey. And so this is why this is same, different, but it's same, within your food journey. So it's just like, you don't have to be all cleaned up or all, perfect. That's God's work. You know what I'm saying? He gonna clean you up. Like, but it takes those daily decisions, those daily choices and actions, and that exposure to seeing something that says, okay, God, you did it for her. Okay, you could do it. Okay, I could do it too. And it's okay. Because a lot of times we paint, like, the picture is painted like, oh, I wouldn't that bad, or I wouldn't, you know what I'm saying? No, I was dirty, you know what I'm saying? Like, no, I'm here. I don't make the right decision. So I love how you shape that that answer. I mean, it was a real answer. So, I love that. And I know that God is still going to get the glory in this, through you, as you make those daily decisions and those daily actions and those daily choices to choose God. And even in the moments that you don't, he still gets the glory. You know what I'm saying? Even in the moments that we don't make the right decision, not saying we make it on purpose, like, oh, I'm just going to do this because God's going to forgive me. But it's just like, no, this is where I am. Like, we have to worship him in spirit and in truth. So it's like, it just can't be in spirit. No, okay, this is the truth right now. This is where I'm at. So I love that. And of course, we're going to be back here next Monday, and we're going to continue the conversation of this journey, of my friend's journey in real time. This is dope. But yeah, we'll be right here with part 2. I don't know how many parts we're gonna have to this, but we're gonna see where the Lord takes us. And Raneca, if you could leave the people with just one thing, and it could be anything we talked about, or encouragement, like one thing, something that they could, something that they could apply or even if it's just encouragement to keep going on the journey, or even to make the decision to start, to allow God, whatever, you feel Holy Spirit putting on you. I always want to leave the people with something to grab. All right.
So I'll frame what I'm going to say in the context of the book that I mentioned that I'm actively writing. And I think you said this in the course of this conversation. This book has been in the works for something like 15, maybe even 20
Wow.
years now. And the reason why I've never released it and wasn't even thinking about finishing it because of the before and the after. I was like, this book only makes sense if there's a before and an after. And, obviously before being a fat, and then the after being this glorious brick house. And the Lord said something to me. He said, the outcome is not your business. Right.
Oh.
And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, what you mean? And he was like, this book is not about outcome. It's about journey. And it hurt me so bad. And I know God wasn't trying to hurt me, but he was trying to break something in me, which was pride. Let me be clear about that. Is
That's
like,
good.
I'm starting this book as a fat, and I will likely end it as a fat, once it's published and all that other stuff and given to the world. And it's like, it's about journey. It's about process. So if I could encourage anyone, or leave a lasting thought, is that it's about process. Just stay in the journey, stay on the journey,
Mm.
and the outcome ain't your business. The outcome ain't your
That's
business.
good.
That's it.
Whew. Amen. We're gonna leave it at that. Stay in the journey, and the outcome ain't your business. I love that. Um, that's dope. Just stay, man. I could go into that, but I'm not. We're gonna close it out. 'Cause we already over, and but yeah, like I said, we'll be right back here next Monday, same time, 6:30 a.m. And if you're watching a replay, please comment, share, let me know like what you got out of it, like in real time. I'm gonna use my friend words, in real time. But and as I always say, like if it's a personal question, or just inbox me, or if it's something you feel free sharing on the just write it in the comments, and I always respond. So yeah. All right. I love y'all, and I will see y'all next week.